Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bookworm's Book Corner, where we get to talk all things books. I am your host, Elizabeth Berg, and I'm so excited to be with you guys here tonight. I will be posting every Friday around a certain time. Sadly, this week I was a bit under the weather, so I had to postpone that until today, but that is a-okay. We're here, we're healthy, and let's get started. So before I start this episode, I want to just give a content warning. The book that I will be talking about today does have talkings about murder, suicide, and other intrusive thoughts. So please take precaution when viewing this episode. All right. The first thing I want to start off is I want you to close your eyes. Okay? What would you do for your parent? What would you do? Now, if you've lost a parent, what would you do to help them if they were still alive? The book we're going to be talking about today is called 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. I bought this at Target. This was actually a really good example of I judged a book by its cover. I actually never heard of this book until one day I went into Target unsupervised and I came out with the book. What drew me to it is the flowers. Obviously, the title, 14 Ways to Die, it was like right in your face. But the whole headline right here, it's one killer, 13 victims, 1 million views. It definitely had that factor where I wasn't sure what to expect. And so I chose this book to be our next book review. Now, I do have some pros and cons I want to talk about before I talk about what I read and what my thoughts are. So before I read it, I skimmed through the book to see how many pages it was. It was about 384 pages in total, along with the author's note. So the author's note is not included in that piece. The back I thought was also interesting, which I will read shortly. And what was interesting is that it literally does say that it is told in short, intense chapters. So what's interesting about this book is some of the chapters are literally a page long. I think the longest is maybe 4 to 5 pages. But for example, 94 is literally a page and a quarter. So they have very short chapters. There is 144 chapters. Yes, 144 chapters in this book, which may sound like a lot, but when you realize that it's about a page roughly per thing, it's not really too bad. Now, I want to just bring up, like I said, some cons as well. Some people may not be a fan of the whole idea of short chapters. I'm going to read the back so you'll get a sense of what I mean. But sometimes when chapters are really short, they're not fleshed out very well. I just read another book that I may do a review on here for, where the chapters were pretty short, but the plot was pretty meh. It didn't really have anything, and it didn't give me that substance that I really, 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 really wanted. So, in that case, it didn't really work out very well. Another thing, though, too, is with what this book is about. It was some ways difficult, and so, like I said, a content warning, a trigger warning, because of the themes in this book, it could be considered a con for a lot of people because the way it goes, some things were like, ooh, and then some things like, whoa. So we'll get a little bit more into that, but that was my little bit of a con. So let me read the back, and then we're going to talk about what my thoughts were during my reading. And I got my little journal of notes ready for you. You have a murder at least 3 people to be called a serial killer. The Magpie Man was looking for his 14th victim. When Jess was 7, her mother was murdered by the Magpie Man. She was the first of his victims, but not the last. 10 years later, the killer is still at large. and Jess applies to appear on an internet reality show where she'll be filmed once a week for the entire day. All her social media, every text, all personal interaction will be seen by viewers, and she knows this is her chance to remind the public of what she has lost and to finally find the vital clue that will lead to her mother's killer. When the show starts airing, Jess becomes public property, and her life is now an open book, waiting to be read. When the anonymous text messages start, Jess begins to realize that the Magpie Man is watching her every move. Told in short, intense chapters, Jess's story is about risking everything to uncover the killer before he can strike again, even if she might be his next victim. So like I said, this book sounded really interesting. I liked the cover, so I bought it right off on a whim. Now, these were my thoughts about this book, this novel. The first thing I want to just talk about is there are 5 stages of grief. For anyone who's ever lost a parent or a grandparent, a friend, no matter who it was, when you lose somebody, you have that stage of grief. There are 5 stages. And what's really, I think, is cool about this book is that our main protagonist, Jess, is a 17-year-old who is not perfect in any way in the slightest. So, like, I've read books where the character is like, oh, perfect, and everything is fine, and she does, or he don't, they don't go through anything really tough, and they don't grow as a person. Jess is definitely not like that. So, the way the author handles the stages of grief and a way to learn how to grieve is interesting. For those who understand, grief is not a linear process. There are days where you could be fine, and then there are days where anything could trigger you and make you sad again or angry. And so, for the most part of this book, and this is not a spoiler, Jess is angry, and you can feel this while you read it. Her father, on the other hand, is depressed, and you can also feel that as well. And what's interesting is Jess begins to talk about her feelings and she grows as a person. And I think that's really admirable because it really shows her character growth throughout the book. Now, another thing, though, that I thought was interesting was there was one page that gave me goosebumps. And I'm going to read it to you real quick. It's not a spoiler, like I said, because this is literally like part of this. You'll get it when I read it. Are you ready? I don't know. Chapter 22. My name is Jessica Simmons, I say. And my mom was killed by the Magpie Man. I don't have time to ease them in. I have to start strong. 10 years ago, on January 22nd, my mom was killed in the alley near my house when she walked from work. She was murdered by a man who was just getting started. The speech had gone through more rewrites than I can count. I was 7 when she died, and when Dad told me, he took the horror away. He told me she was taken by someone who collected beautiful things, and that's where the name came from. My dad called him the Magpie Man, and I told my friends at school, and they told their parents. And somewhere along the line, the newspapers started putting it on their front pages, and suddenly we made a monster. I look at Danny, making sure this is okay, and he nods, but doesn't smile. We didn't know he'd become a serial killer. My mom, the first person he murdered, but there are 13 now, and he won't stop until he's caught. If you're watching, I say, calming my breathing and steadying myself for the end. If you're the monster who murdered my mother and is watching this, you should know you didn't break me. You made me. And no one else can stop you. I will. So the first time, I read this part a couple times to make sure I understood what was going on. And the point of this is Jess has the opportunity to be on a YouTube show. Look what we're doing here. And the thing is, though, is every day or on a certain day, she gets recorded. And so she's using her platform as a way to find who killed her mother. And so we're going through this journey with her of trying to figure out the case, trying to understand what's going on. while at the same time watching her grow as a person. Now, something I liked about this book, this isn't a romance novel. This isn't something that is sweet and nice, and it's like some books have a lot of mixtures. This mostly focuses on like the creepy thriller mystery aspect. There's some sweet scenes in here, but that's not really the main focus. Another thing, though, that I really thought was interesting and how it was portrayed, social media. I have a love-hate relationship with social media because of the generation I grew up in. So like I see people post things about their lives all the time, and it's crazy how things change because of social media. Do you get to know people, but at the same time, you don't really know who it is? And then there are shows like Catfish or online bullying and things that can happen online because people don't look at you in the face anymore. It's anonymous. And that's the other part about this book that is so creepy. The fact that she's online doing this, trying to solve this case, and someone reaches out to her and goes, the profile picture is a magpie, and the account has tweeted once that has more than 1,000 followers. It's not really him, she says, and while I know she's right, it still makes me shiver. I'm watching you, Jessica. The fact that they added that piece, it's so creepy because this could really happen. Not the whole, like, oh, well, we're going to post this, and the fact that people online can say things, and the fact that it's so anonymous, to me it was very creepy. Out of all the parts of this book, that was definitely one of the creepiest, was the the anonymous talking of, we don't know who this is, but they're trying to get Jess's attention, and she's trying to figure out who the killer is, and it just blew my mind. So that was wow. Like I said before, though, I really like that this book represents that grief is not linear. I love that Jess is not perfect and that it's not focusing on anything but catching the magpie man. It's not focusing on, oh, she needs to fall in love, and oh, we need to have this and this and this happen. It's Jess's life, and we're watching it happen. It's not some makeshift, oh, love meet cute where, oh, she meets this guy and falls in love with him and boom, they're in a relationship. Like, there's nothing like that in here. And I appreciate that because I want something that has sustainability. And this book definitely was sustaining my interest. The chapters are, like I said, a bit quick because of how short they are, but at the same time, because they're so short, a lot gets packed in there. So you jump from like scene to scene to scene to scene. And so you have so many scenes going on because of how much detail is pressed in. The last thing I also want to say, I like the characters. The side characters are good. And for most of the time while I was reading this, I was really wondering who is the character, who is the killer of this book? How did this happen? Why did it happen? And it was interesting how it ended. I am not disappointed in the ending. I was a little nervous because I get disappointed with endings of thrillers sometimes because they seemed very obvious, and it definitely, to me, it wasn't. So, that was really cool too. So, like I said, do I recommend this book? I definitely recommend this book. I liked it. It was interesting. It was a quick read, and it kept my interest peaked, so that way I could figure out what is going to happen next. So, like I said in the beginning, my friends and my followers, thank you so much for coming up tonight and watching this awesome book review. I will be posting another review this upcoming Friday. That way we have another story to tell. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening and have a wonderful week, and I will see you Friday. Bye.